I got a lot of questions that I've got queued up here for Chris, so we might break these all up into individual videos today. So be sure to like and subscribe and comment on these topics, so that way we can keep these things rolling out for you. The context to the first question, because we're asking, is patch 6.35 enough content? Online, I've been listening to Zeno, to Zepla, to Cole, to like watching all the tweets, reading all the various different tweets, and essentially a couple themes have come up. And so that's what we're going to present to you guys today across today's live show, is these themes. And the first theme that continues comes up is, has Final Fantasy XIV abandoned the casual player? So Chris, like when I was talking to you this morning, like you're like, there's a lot of content. Like it's this is the 635. Like they got the deep dungeon, you got all kinds of relics, you got all kinds of things that you can be working on. We know we got tons of hardcore content with the recent releases of the ultimates. But what do you think about this theme that the community's talking about?
So half patches are exactly that. It's the content that couldn't roll into the main patch. So they're always a little bit lighter. The theory there being, here's some fresh stuff to do, but you're also probably still working on the main patch. And so the patch stands as a whole. That's the main patch, the half patch, and anything that releases in a sub patch, such as a delayed Savage release with a 0.1, or with a Savage unlock with a 0.8, or anything like that. Anything that slides into one of these 0.1, 0.8, or other numbers that we've gotten on one-offs. But most of the content is summed up as 0.0 or 0.5 for the patches. The 0.3 patch as a whole is the lull. It is the mid-cycle. You're a year in, so anything from the base expansion has worn off. The vast majority of players who have been around the whole time are fully caught up. They've leveled what they wanted to level. By that point, you've gotten plenty of alternative sources of experience, so everybody's kind of done leveling what they want to level. The relics are kind of just getting into swing, so you're not hitting their big hard steps yet. In this case, you're just starting the crafter gather steps, and the first step of a relic is always kind of the easiest one. And so you're kind of like, okay, well, what's the draw? This expansion, the draws are Island Sanctuary, Variant Criterion, and Deep Dungeon. Those are your big three alternative, totally optional, kind of lateral progression type systems where you do not have to do them. They do not really benefit the rest of the game. But if you want to, they're there for people that want to put time in. This patch cycle, we only got one of those. We got Deep Dungeon, which means if that is not your particular flavor of side content, we did not get a bunch of new golden saucer with it. We did not really get, the tribes are really fast. We did not get anything new for your island or anything, or we did not get a new variant. We did not get a new Unreal, any of these alternative systems. We just didn't get any of that. What ends up happening is like, there is a question of 0.35 on its own gave us basically a relic step. That relic step ended up being very, very lackluster. It's just 1,500 tomes. I think people were hoping for something different. It'll age well because that'll one day be poetic. So this will be a relic set that's really easy for people to complete in 8.0, 9.0, where they loop back, because this will be simply be poetics only. So it'll feel like a Heavensward relic where you kind of just blast through whatever until whatever the final step ends up being. But right now it doesn't feel good. It would, even if they just swapped it to a different currency, like hunt seals or Grand Company seals or anything like that, even if you farmed it the same way, it would feel better. Even if it represented the same hours, it would feel better. But it is identical to the first step. And I think people worked really hard to get as many relics as they wanted through the first step, under the assumption that the second step would be a lot of work. And so when it isn't, it's like, okay, so what do I do? And 0.3 dropped an ultimate, which on patch ultimate, which we are still in kind of that on patch time frame, is not necessarily everybody's thing. Anybody that wants to do it on a roll that is not the roll they went through Savage with, because of the way gearing works in 14 till Savage unlocks, that's a little more work. And we're not to the point where like dungeon gear and stuff can keep up yet. So top isn't really widely available yet to a lot of players to play the way they want to. And it's very hard. They said it wouldn't be as hard as DSR. It's been a static killer. So what are you doing? Like, are you just running the Alliance raid over and over? You're caught up on story. You're caught up. And so there is this question of what are you doing? If you don't have a backlog from anything from the last 10 years, which you're not a newer player.
Which is where this is where I feel like it's the veteran frustration ends up being the case, where you've said numerous times, like if you're brand new to the game, if you just came in with Shadowbringers or Endwalker, there's a high probability that you're like, I've got tons of stuff to do. I haven't touched Eureka. I haven't touched Bosha. I haven't gone into the previous deep dungeons. I haven't done these various different things. And it can feel, a little overwhelming. Like new players can say, oh, but the thing that I think a lot of people have come in from, like with various different waves of players, they talked about and praised that they love that it's optional content and not required content, right? Like, if I want to play, I don't have to play. I can choose to go into these ways. And that's where like you start to see the veteran player. Like I was watching like Zepla, and her talking about, no, I haven't quit 14, but no, I'm not playing 14. And then, I've seen Cole's videos and like Xeno's videos talking about gearing, a lot of things echoing a lot of the key frustrations that I've brought up over the last, 4 to 6 years, which is like, for me, I'm like, yes, I would love to see them do this. But the question that I have in it is that I think it breaks the fundamental design philosophy that Yoshi P has established with the game, meaning you can take breaks. It's encouraged to take breaks. And when you come back, you shouldn't be punished for taking a break unless you own a house. And then if you do own a house, screw you. Congrats on winning your house.
I think that the frustration is that the calmest response to anybody that's frustrated with the content cycle. I'm having a great time.
Right.
But the calmest response is just take a break. But if you want to do something, being told to do something else is not fun.
Or being
if
told
you
to
want
take
to
a
go to your
break
favorite restaurant for your birthday and they're closed because the chef's sick, somebody saying, well, just eat somewhere else.
Just eat a sandwich.
Dick move. Just eat at home. There's other restaurants. And you're like, I want
to play. I want to spend my time here.
I think the game's designed to take breaks is not a complete solution. Now there are other people who are like, man, I've been looking for a chance to take a break. And for those people, this kind of patch is great.
You're like, oh yeah.
They're like, man, I was really looking for an opportunity to eat somewhere else. And so they get to go do that. But for the people that want to play 14, this is their game, this is their community, and they love it. There is a valid frustration here if you don't have anything to do. Now, I played Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands without liking them. And I played Guild Wars 2, which has no direction given to you. And so I have already run into this frustration elsewhere. And as a result, you either have to quit those places, which I don't want to do. I want to play what I want to play. Or you have to learn to kind of set goals for yourself that are optional, but don't feel optional. Because you're like, no, I'm going to do this. Nobody told me I had to, but I'm going to. And so I'm having a lot of fun this patch cycle, because I've still got goals. But this is one of the first times, one of the advantages of 14 is it's a very on the rails experience. You log in and you know what you need to do. It's not a sandbox game. You don't, you go into the theme park and the sign says new ride this way. And you just go get on the ride. And there's something really nice about after a long day at work or whatever, or playing a sandbox game where you've had to kind of draw on your brain power to just log in and just do what is asked of you. And this is a patch cycle that is a little light on that. That all being said, this is a game that releases its half patches, this expansion, exactly 56 days after the patch drops. So we knew when this was coming. In addition to that, they have been releasing their patches on exactly 133 or 140 days, depending on if it's the season where they take their 1 week break. So you know exactly when the next patch is coming. My spreadsheet has been predictable to a fault because they have been predictable to a fault. So I just put in my best guesses and they are following exactly what they said they would do. In between, we will have live letters. We have another Moogle Tombstone event. We're building the Fan Fest. So all of these feelings, while they are fun to talk about and drive views and whatever, and everybody to build a, to focus on negativity. And this negativity has been very self-feeding. And I've seen a lot of people complaining a lot of places. I've watched some of the same stuff you watched, and I've watched some other stuff. That's what's fun right now, is for people to complain.
That's the season.
But that will be temporary.
Right.
Because all of those same people, if you clip them now, or if you clipped them 8 months ago when they said, I'd never take a break from this game. I'll never get burned out on this game.
I'll play this game until the day I die.
Them now, they look like two different people.
Right.
Because they're just two very different points in time. And that very same person, when you turn back around and they got tickets to FanFest, and we're in patch 6.45 and it's a better Relic step, and 6.4 is already kicking into gear, and we're speculating, are we going to Mercidia? Are we going to New World? Are we going to Corvos? Oh my gosh. And then we go to FanFest. It's going to be so exciting.
New jobs. Yeah, absolutely.
And so like this is a very temporary 7 months ago I made a video warning like we can get patch cycles like this, and people that hadn't experienced it criticized me for that viewpoint. Now we're in one of those patch cycles where some people feel this, and in that video I said the longest a lull can be is 4 weeks. What is wrong about my state 7 months ago is I did the math on this one. Technically this lull could run you 5 weeks. That's it. That's it. That's the big pain point, is that for 5 weeks you might not have anything to do. Assuming you give Deep Dungeon a try, assuming you give the Relic systems a try, assuming you give the Lopperites a try, you should have enough content to give you a couple weeks, and you're going to have 5 weeks until Moogle Tombstone, which will have to last you 4 weeks, 29 days until the patch.
Yeah. Now, my like as an outsider here, someone who's not playing Final Fantasy 14, like my critique in the discussion and the where I insert my own frustration as a part of everything I've kind of listened to, I think it comes down into kind of a synergy in that system, that Deep Dungeon is that casual content, and it also can scale up to that extreme content. It really just depends on like what your goals are with that, because you're going after solo clears, which that's where like you can really kind of flex that.
Solo, I'm doing all of it solo. My own Aether pool solo.
Right.
I've made this additionally hard.
So you're able to take that content and make it harder. Like that's one of the things we've always praised about it. But the content in 14 has always been siloed, right? Like it's like in the theme park, like what they do in this system doesn't necessarily translate over to this system, and vice versa. And there's a strength. But I think when the casual player is concerned, where I insert myself into that, is that sometimes it's nice that when you have like, I'm doing this, but I'm also inadvertently kind of doing something else. There's an asynchronous connection. There's this underlying fundamental thing that like by doing this, I'm actually making it better for the raiders, or I'm passively doing these various things. And that's what Sandbox generally brings to the table over theme park, is that you might be doing something and you might be having fun and you benefit the raiding scene and the hardcore scene and the midcore scene. And I think essentially where you have the siloed aspect where I insert my own thoughts into the feedback I've heard from Zeno and Zeppela and Cole and Twitter and all of these like little things that have been popping up into my feed. Like I go, yeah, they are siloed. And so the hardcore player is eating good, and the casual and the low core player have no help. They do not help the hardcore player outside of providing funding through their subscription. And so they, and that's just the nature of the core of the game. But that's just my own thought on that. We got other topics, unless you want to follow up on that thought.
I think this expansion has done a good job about saying like, it's not just that their money helps support the same game you play, but we've also seen some Savage Raiders go really hard in the paint when it comes to like Island Sanctuary. We've also seen some people, at the end of last expansion, who were maybe like our peers or were big into the story, go into their first ultimates and their first Savages. Mm-hmm. And so I think like one of the things that traditionally gets done in MMO communities is they take these silos and they assume that it's community A and community B and never sell the two cross. And if there's a player that plays with the other, Romeo and Juliet style, they better keep it a secret because these communities hate each other. And like, I just don't know that that's true. Right. I think there are people that, maybe spend 80% of their time and 20% in the other, or I raid on, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Friday nights. I just gather with my friends and do maps with my friends. These new Elpis maps are amazing. And so, when you start listing out all the content that's available and then you realize you haven't even tried it, you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone. And I'm not saying if you try it, you have to like it. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of things to try if you're somebody that wants to play 14. If you wanted to take a break, the fact that all this is optional is really great. Go take your break. We'll see you when you get back.
Right.
But if you aren't wanting to take a break, you like Final Fantasy 14, you want to spend more time in Eorzea or beyond inside the world of Final Fantasy 14, there is a question of like, have you tried everything yet? And I think they worked very, very hard in Shadowbringers to drop the skill floors to the point where I complained about it. But the advantage of that is that it's very easy to learn any of the roles now. It's very easy to get into crafting and gathering for the first time. This new Deep Dungeon, if you go into a matched group of 4 with random people, you're going to have some fun. You're going to have some success. And so like they've made the floor easy enough that you should be able to get a taste of any one system. And that should tell you whether or not it's worth going and learning. That there's like an entire group of creators who just make like written guides, which means they're basically, in most cases, unpaid guides for all this deep dungeon stuff. It's a whole community full of all these people that you've probably never heard of. You know, Angelus is not somebody that I've consumed a ton of content from. And there's this whole other side of the game you can go discover and learn. And the mid-cycle is when I like that. The mid-cycle, the kind of 0.25 to 0.4 right before FanFest, 0.45, it is the most intimate time in the community. The only people that are here are the people that want to play.
Right.
The people that are here between 0.5 and 0.1, a lot of them are here to be part of the thing, right? They're in downtown to see the parade. And that's cool. And I'm glad they're here. But as soon as the parade's over, they're going to go back home. And so like enjoy the seasons differently. And that's where I think 0.35 is at. I think people's frustrations are valid. I would have loved to see a little more from the Relic step. I think Larry's art tweeted out, he quote tweeted his past self saying like, it's really important during these low times to have a grind because it gives the people that want to play an optional thing to do. And his new tweet says something along the lines of past Larry, I have some bad news for you. And like the current Relic grind could have been a little more intense. But remember, when Eureka launched, people were pissed. Yeah.
And that's what, let's jump into the comments because that's what Sammy's hitting up, saying is that people love to romanticize the past. Lots of people were complaining about this when Eureka came out, as well as when Bozia came out. And it's so easy to forget that when we're in the thick of the thing that might be bothering you the most at this point in time. And if you guys always want to like let us know your thoughts in a live sense, we do film these live, so be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I want to follow this up with Mandrake as well, because in kind of a whole connection says, this is the 0.3 patch. This has always been the roughest time in Final Fantasy XIV's content history, because we yet don't have the expansion news. We yet don't have that big hype cycle going into the expansion. So this ends up being also traditionally when it also traditionally is when they finished the story of the expansion, where in Endwalker, they finished it in 6.0, and we've seen some changes that I think have led to this. This is what you and I think we called this out like a year ago at a minimum, where we were talking about the increased duration of the patch and the story being complete. Our prediction was that we would just see more drama and frustration being vented in the community because there's more time for that. As opposed to like that.
We can talk about it a bit longer on whether or not two healers get along for 2 weeks. Why the hell is that worth 2 weeks of our time? Because Blue Mage isn't here. Because the second portion of the next portion of Island Sanctuary Criterion isn't here. Because FanFest isn't here. Because the media tour isn't here. Because the interviews aren't flowing. Like that's why we can focus on a twit longer for 2 weeks. And like everybody has gone and been educated on that healer's logs. Why do we care? Because we have nothing better to talk about.
Right. And that's where like a content creation perspective does pose challenges. That's where like it's very difficult if you're trying to make your living off of content. And these gaps
in the last 12 months because I don't talk about stuff like that. I haven't published in 11 days because I have nothing to talk about.
And here's the thing, people will hate on you because they don't know you, and that's just the reality of the internet, right? But the thing is that like you actively do not engage with that at a financial cost to yourself, a huge cost to yourself. And then it's like, and then people complain like, oh, content creators are just about this and they're complaining about that. It's like they have to if they want to pay their rent.
Not all of them are. It's just the ones that aren't, you're not hearing from.